Hello, I am Barendipitous, here with another video for the TTRPG shelf. Now here's a cool one. Tomb of Annihilation. Now, if what probably the most famous dungeon in D&D history is a dungeon called Tomb of Horrors, which was created by Gary Gygax, one of the guys who created Dungeons and Dragons back in the late 1970s. And that's kind of an infamous dungeon. There's some iconic elements of it for those who, if you know, you know, kind of a thing. It's also not the best written dungeon, honestly. It's kind of it's very slow and kind of, it's not easy to run. But that dungeon was created by a lich, an undead wizard named Acerak. This guy right here. And one of the iconic features of the Tomb of Horrors is this sort of like this devil face kind of carved into the walls. So Tomb of Annihilation kind of extends the lore of Tomb of Horrors and of Acerak in general. And there's some really cool things here. I have run this adventure, I think a couple of times. Sometimes, this is another one where, kind of like Curse of Strahd, there's a dungeon at the end. And honestly, you could just sort of start at that dungeon. This takes place in a sort of Amazon jungle kind of place. This place is called Chult, Chult. So you can see a very different flavor of adventure here, which is really cool. Yeah, Port Nyanzaru. Definitely an environment that I'm not used to sort of running as a dungeon master. But there's lots of cool things in here. An important part of the premise of this adventure is that there is a death curse. Normally in D&D game, in like the D&D world, normally in D&D fantasy worlds, you can sort of use, if someone dies, you can use resurrection, like powerful resurrection spells to bring them back. Sometimes it costs a lot of money to have to do that, or a lot of resources, but you can do that. But with this death curse, people who die aren't coming back, or people who have been resurrected are feeling weaker and weaker. So there's something going on that's just like sort of tampered with the powers of death in general. And that's a problem. And there's something somewhere in Chult is causing that. Somewhere deep in the jungles of Chult. In this case, it is is it down here? So where is it? I cannot remember. Somewhere down here is the titular Tomb of Annihilation, or Tomb of the Nine Gods, as it is called in this adventure. There's definitely a lot of like jungle travel, jungle survival kind of stuff. I'm less familiar with these jungle areas because I've only run maybe about like half of them, or maybe like a third to half of these jungle encounters. There's stuff like zombie T-Rexes. That's not what this is, but there is a zombie T-Rex somewhere in here, and like dinosaurs is very much kind of like a Jurassic Park kind of a thing. Eventually, though, you'll get to this forbidden city, right? And there's these nine gods, kind of like a imagine if you like discovered like a lost Aztecan city, and you discover that those people worship nine different animal gods or something like that, and there's different shrines for each of them with different challenges. And there's also a group of Yuan-Ti snake people, Yuan-Ti, which are snake people who have sort of like taken hold of that ruined city. But then eventually you get into the actual Tomb of the Nine Gods, and this thing is deep. Like there is here. Let me try to find. Okay, so we got level 1 here, and I love running this dungeon. There's a lot of just like wacky, crazy things because Acerak, the guy who built this dungeon, he specifically builds dungeons to mess with adventurers. And I love that. Like the traps, like he even has like cryptic hints, which are really not as helpful as one might hope. I mean, they speak truthfully, but you don't know like what they mean or anything like that, and whatever. And yeah, just it's fun because like I usually I don't believe in the dungeon master being an adversary against the players. Like we're all here to have fun. As a dungeon master, the most important thing to me is that everyone has fun. I try to facilitate the game and make sure that the game stays fun for everybody. But it's it is also kind of fun to surprise your players to sort of like have kind of like appropriately subvert their expectations. And it's dangerous to as far as like subverting expectations or surprising. Sometimes it can be dangerous to do that, right? But if you use these sort of like twisting tunnels and ridiculous, strange traps, excuse me, and things like that, the players can't blame you. They can blame the adventure, right? Hopefully. But yeah, so level 1, we got level 2 there. Obviously, I'm not going to go into detail about all of it, but yeah, level 3. And they also have each of the levels has names too. So let's see. Level 1 was called Rotten Halls. Level 2, Dungeon of Deception. Level 3 was, what was that? Vault of Reflection. You just go deeper and deeper with each level. There's even like crazy diagrams of like, here's what the room looks like, and like here's how the trap works, and all that kind of. I love stuff like that. That's fantastic. Level 4 is Chambers of Horror. Yeah, here we go. It kind of feels a little bit like Tomb of Horrors, kind of. Level 5 is Gears of Hate. You look at this. You got these giant like pentagonal rooms that are on top of these gears, and there's doors on certain walls. And there's a room somewhere that lets you turn the gears, and of course that causes these rooms to turn and give you access, kind of like a Zelda. There's elements of like a Zelda dungeon in some of these as well. Yeah, not a rolling ball, but like this juggernaut thing, like rolling down a hill at the players there. Level 6 is Cradle of the Death God. Here we go. Yeah, this is where you like fight the final boss essentially. The death curse is being caused by a Serac, and he's sort of siphoning souls for a terrible evil experiment. And yeah, it's crazy. There's some wild stuff there. But yeah, there you go. And then yeah, wilderness encounters, if you want to use that, all kinds of resources and stuff for and various magic items. This is a really cool adventure. I like this. I like Tomb of Annihilation a lot, especially the dungeon at the end is what I like most about it. There's even like a player version of a zombie T-Rex where zombies are crawling out of its mouth. Here's a player version of the if you want to run it like a hex crawl, go from one hex to another kind of a thing. Various letters that kind of lead to different plot hooks. Oh yeah, you need to hire a guide, and so these are all different guides with their own sort of like agendas and reasons for like going, different attitudes and reasons, personalities and reasons for going out into the jungle and stuff like that. Various like puzzles and things like that, and oh yeah, the plaques that have the hints that a Serac gives, even though they're not terribly helpful. The gear room where like they have these dials, you have to figure out how they work. Love that stuff. And then of course, not all books have this, but this particular one has a double-sided map, of course. This is Chult, basically, on one side, and then on the other is a player version of it, where all the vital information is sort of blanked out. But there are some things where like you'd be told where certain settlements are and things like that. But yeah, I really enjoy running this adventure. I've only run it like once or twice, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, sort of having the players go through, and there's even sort of like a meat grinder mode in here where like if your character becomes unconscious, there's a chance that your character might die outright if they're not given medical attention quickly, or they might also just like sort of stabilize and not be dying anymore and just have 0 hit points and just be unconscious. The rolls to make that happen are more difficult in the meat grinder mode. It's just sort of like characters die more often, and once your character dies, until the death curse is taken care of, can't really come back. So yeah, there's some really every single adventure has like really high stakes. There's like world ending stuff going on. Um, just all over the place. And for most of these adventures, they're sort of like they happen in the same world, um, just like maybe 10, 15 years away from each other, or maybe like 20, 30 years away from each other, or something like that. Um, if you want to run it that way, you don't have to. But yeah, I love this adventure. It's a lot of fun. With the dungeon and everything, and the different, and also just like a different environment that's fun to play around with. So, yeah, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, all the best.